Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I am Principal Program Manager, PM Manager in Microsoft. I have been working on M365 change management and incident communication for over a year and a half now. This has been a great journey so far because I've been able to talk to many of you, different industry verticals, different segments on the change management and incident communication. That's how Michael and I have connected as well. So there are lots of learnings we had. So I would love to share them with you. The best practices from some of the enterprises and mid-segment and SMBs that have been able to successfully manage their environment. Change has never been easy. It's especially when you're talking about cloud services, you have change coming constantly your way and you're managing. When I'm hearing all your roles, you're also the change drivers in your organization. So it's extremely important for you to know a lot of these things. I'm so thrilled to see how Michael has been distilling all the information. So this chapter seems to be really very helpful. So thanks everybody in this forum that's been contributing, because this is really important. First, I'd like to touch upon the challenges that we have heard you're facing, regardless of the industry verticals and segments that I've mentioned. Most of them are pretty consistent. I was very surprised during my first 30 days of my job when I was talking to many of you, like how I can take the checklist and then say check, check, check. They're not very different. Only few of them are different. So I'll walk them through and then see if that resonates with you, or if there are more things that you see that are not there in this list. One thing that we said, this is constant change. We hear that, hey, we keep seeing the changes. It's a good problem to have for cloud services. Microsoft would always want to provide more value for your money. So, and that's how things are going to be across the cloud services, across the companies. So change something that we cannot stop or pause. So we understand that's a challenge, and you appreciate some of the features that are rolling out. So it's innovation is going to continue. The second point is a really important point, which is kind of make or break, if I were to say. Ultimately, if you see a change, Microsoft is communicating, these are the changes that are coming your way. You're triaging them, figuring out whether that has any impact for your organization, then what steps have to be taken. You have one or more owners, and sometimes you have multiple, because there is a life cycle of the change that you're managing, from the time that you're processing the information to the time you deploy and train your users. So there are multiple players involved in that. So today there is no ability for you to manage this kind of workflow, because ultimately this is a workflow. The message center today in its current incarnation doesn't let you do a workflow management, or you also don't want to come up with a product, because that's not the focus here. We want to get more accurate, give you more targeted messages, and make the experiences better. And because there is no tooling, or because there is no product that is helping you do the workflows, now you're having to manage the content from one place to another place. Many organizations use like multiple collaboration tools with OneDrive and OneNote and Excel and Teams, Yammer, like you name a tool, collaboration tool, organizations have used them. And that involves cost. And I'm surprised how much of effort goes into managing the content and triaging. At an average, I've heard anywhere from 4 to 8 hours spent collectively just managing the content. There is lots of documentation that comes. We are not necessarily doing a good job of connecting all of that to the message center post. And then what it does mean is that you'll have to, once you understand the change, now you have to go hunt for the documentation that is related to it, which will help you either follow some best practices or help with your end user training. So we are trying to do a better job there. I'll come to that point a little later. We give you broad windows of rollout. Every feature team does it differently. Some stay in the preview for a longer time, target release in a longer time before we move to the GA for various reasons. So there is no one size fits all. But when we give you a 2 months window, it's becoming harder for you to see when is it coming to my tenant, right? Because I have some work items that need to be done once it lands in my tenant, and I don't have visibility into that, and that makes it harder for you to plan. People that follow roadmap, they sometimes observe there is a inconsistency between the MC and roadmap. Sometimes roadmap says this is in development, and message center you might have seen a post saying this is going to be rolled out soon. So there are some inconsistencies that you have noticed. Let me pause there a minute and see if anybody sees these things, or are we missing something here?
For me, this is very accurate. I mean, I think last year there were over 700 changes during the year, which averaged to 2 changes a day. And we put in place a process to review the changes on a weekly basis. And sometimes an hour a week is not enough, and it can be as much as 2 to 3 hours a week just to review all the posts for that week.
Yeah, I would say that also number 5 is the one that takes, the most frustration out of the ones that were in charge of it. Yeah. Especially because in some cases the rollouts are not consistent at all, and we had a case recently that one feature in Teams took more than 4 months to roll out through the whole tenant. Yeah. That was very difficult to manage.
Yeah. All right. Can I get a hands raised if you been processing roadmap information? Wonderful. And if you don't mind giving me some feedback, how do you use roadmap, and especially in conjunction with the message center posts?
So I can start off with this. So for a while we had been pretty much ignoring roadmap because it was farther out and we were just focusing on message center. But more recently we started looking at how we can maybe monthly visit roadmap and look at the things that are new this month and do a triage process on those as well. And so we see message center as something we need to visit weekly. Roadmap is maybe something we need to visit monthly.
Yeah, when we started the journey on O365, yes, I was all over the roadmap, but then when we realized that the alignment between roadmap and the message center was just, too much to handle. It was just so disconnected that I really pay much more attention to the message center than the roadmap, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I concur with what they said too. The weekly digest for the message center changes are far more granular and timely and accurate, it seems like. And yeah. I less frequently look at the roadmap.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Let me move on to the next one. So based on about an year of customer interactions we have had, we defined the change management pillars because there are multiple aspects to how we manage the change in our respective organizations. So the first pillar is all about experiences, tooling, and insights. So you can consider the experiences as the message center. How are you able to interact with message center? How are the filters effective? Are they helping you discover the most relevant information that you care about? Tooling is are there workflow management tools that we are helping you with? We are not just giving you blobs of data, but we are also helping you manage the data, process that, and then have owners assigned to that. Our first step towards that is message center and planner sync. How many of you have used message center and planner sync or have played around with it? Michael, I know you're one of our first folks.
We were one of the ones to pilot Planner, and yeah, we used that and really changed our whole process around that. Initially, we were running our triage meeting based off of the weekly digest email, and then when we had the ability to sync to Planner, then we switched to using Planner as our queue to process in our triage meetings, and that was very helpful, and let us assign tasks based on message center posts.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dinah.
I was just curious, Michael, who all or what roles are a part of your triage meeting? Do you have business users represented in there, or is it mostly like IT type functions that are in those meetings?
It is primarily IT. It's entirely IT. Currently, the most we've got several people representing SharePoint, and we have several people representing they're focused primarily on SharePoint and collaboration related changes. We have 2 or 3 people in the meeting, and I work for a large multinational, so we've got a pretty big, we've got a huge IT department. So we have multiple people from these major areas, SharePoint being one, messaging, which is Exchange and Skype, being another. We have an identity architect who comes on a regular basis, and anything Azure Active Directory or security, he tends to take a first look at, and then sometimes we'll hand that off to other people in the security practice. And occasionally we have IT or developer people from the business side who are doing custom dev on SharePoint, for example, or in Office, but primarily on SharePoint come as well. So most of the time it's our SharePoint support team and our messaging support team that are the core team in the triage meeting. But that can vary from organization to organization. And so but it's primarily IT people. We do the first assessment and then figure out who else needs to know about the change or what communication needs to be done about the change. And so that's when you would engage business people.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And that's been pretty consistent, Diana. I've pretty much heard the same process across the board. In the triage process, there are no business, but they are definitely the consumers of it. Some organizations actually send a digest of what changes will be deployed, especially if there is a, for instance, I'll take an example of the Cortana email that Michael has mentioned. There are some businesses who actually wanted that because they heard about that elsewhere as well. And some IT people thought it might be too intrusive and their users may not know. So there is always a collaboration between these two groups to figure out whether we should turn off or on some of the features that are extremely customer facing, their end user facing features.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I have to mention that Michael has been one of the really key contributors in shaping up the planner sync. So thanks, Michael. We have not said that enough, but he was very patient while we were developing. He was like the first 2 months we put something together and we had lots of workarounds in getting that out of the door. Initially it was painful. We had to go and actually do a refresh in my message center. But we really appreciate your contribution, Michael. Thank you so much. I take this up.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to help.
Yeah. And today we do not have any insights. I will give you an example of the insights. In cases where the change comes for your organization, you are not yet ready to implement that change. And there can be several reasons. One, you have to go through a compliance review and they have to say yes, either because of data residency or some other regulations that your industry has specifically designed for. That could be one reason. Or you have a huge project going on. A couple of you mentioned Teams implementation is going full throttle. So you are heads down trying to solve for that, and you may not have enough capacity to take on the new changes that are coming up. So there can be a variety of reasons why you are not yet ready to implement that change. In those cases, you turn off a feature, and there is no capability today to go back, visit which ones have you turned off. And some companies actually do document the ones that have disabled, and they'll go back to them and turn on, but it's again your manual. So we are trying to figure out how do we get the telemetry and insights at your tenant level across 50 different workloads. Right now, M365 is that huge. Several feature teams. So we are trying to figure out how can we enable that reporting for you. And the next pillar is content and coverage. Making sure all environments, all platforms, all features are consistently covered, both in roadmap and message center. And you also have good documentation, as I mentioned. Okay, am I okay now?
Yes.
Thanks, Don. And that is the second pillar. The third you have mentioned, and that is one of the most painful areas for many of you, the predictability on when that is coming. We will probably have to have the rollout going on for a couple months or more. But for your tenant, when is that going to be deployed? Or at least when we tell you once it is deployed is probably one of the things we have to start helping you with. So that is going to be a huge endeavor. Many of you are very technical, so I don't have to explain that we are touching probably about 1,200 engineering teams, their engineering practices deeply, and bringing them all in one consistent way of doing the flighting. So this is the hardest problem of all, if you ask me, to nail it. But we have started the journey. You will see the progress. It'll be a bit slow progress, but we will get there. So you'll have to bear with us. The second part of the predictability is the previews. Today, we do not provide the list of previews that we are doing, public previews, not very consistently. So we are trying to address this as well, because many of you have expressed interest to participate in those previews and being able to opt into that instead of knowing through your contracts. Many times that's what happens. The fourth pillar is about how do we make it easy for you to implement? Can we give you instructions and the control pane that is intuitive, relatively easy for you to implement? Today we do it, but again, there are lots of flavors. We are trying to come to a consistent way of doing maybe 3 or 4 varieties of doing it. There is a lot of work to be done on this pillar, but we feel like that is one area we would like to invest. So on a whole, these are different aspects. Obviously, they are not the full list. They are the themes than the items. Is there any aspect of change management that you don't see covered in this pillar? All right, I take silence as probably we have covered. If you do have feedback, please do reach out, and we would love to hear from you what you think. I have left the email, the group alias towards the end of the slide. I'll get there. Also know that this is hot off press. We have finalized this last month. We wanted to be more focused on efforts. That's why we have defined those pillars. So if you have feedback, please do reach out. We would love to hear from you. So we have covered this a little bit when Michael was explaining about the triage process. When we spoke to various organizations. The organizations that have been able to successfully manage their processes around the change have done one thing consistently. They had a defined process. They know when a triage happens, for instance. They know who are the actors, for which workload, who are the ones they should be assigning this to. Whether or not they are actually admins on Message Center, they know who to reach out to. And they agree on an ownership. They agree on the cadence at which the triage happens. At least once a week seems to be more productive. Some companies do it twice a week because they have geographically distributed teams and they feel like they need a little bit more collaboration with them because it doesn't happen very naturally. Maybe it's no longer valid because it's anyways not happening. All of us are working from home, so I'll leave that aside. But regularly triaging the messages that are coming is very important. If you have noticed, there is a spike in the number of message center posts you are seeing these days. Ever since the COVID had started, all service teams are adjusting to how they send you the updates. On one hand, Teams, for instance, has doubled down on the number of changes they are making. Some have taken a little bit more conservative approach because they want the services to be stable before they roll out multiple features. We are also doing the rollout a little bit slower because the stability of the platform, especially when we are all working from home, is super important. We can't impact the service. So emphasis has been heavily on the service stability during these hard times. We are slowly coming back to normal because now we all have figured out how to make it work when everybody is working from home. So we are bringing the balance back. So you should see the Message Center posts coming back to the normalcy. So having the right owners and sometimes moving from one task to another task, another owner needs to be agreed upon too. I'll give an example. There's a SharePoint administrator who completes the deployment of it. And then he or she will move that to the next owner who is the adoption lead. Maybe there is a different way of doing the same thing that your end users are very used to. So moving that to change adoption lead, making sure there is end user training on how these will have to be done are really important. So you do have to have those owners as well as part of your triage process. We have seen some organizations who have a little bit of challenge with the adoption, and when we went and spoke to them, what we realized is that the IT team is that is responsible for deployment has a very tight collaboration, but when the handoff happens to the change adoption, it's not seamless. They're not part of the triage, so they don't understand what change is coming and that they have to prepare the content for. So there is some gap there, and you would want to avoid that as well. And then, as I said, workflow management tool has proven to be extremely critical in your change management, especially if you are 3 or 4 people that are working and more. 1 or 2, you can naturally work with each other and make it happen. But the moment you have a third or fourth person in the process, it might be a little bit of problem. So some companies went ahead, used the public-facing Service Comms API, and they have done their own integration. Technical companies that have resources in their hand were able to do that. Some organizations who have done integration with Azure DevOps. So the Message Center posts come directly into their ADO instance, Azure DevOps, and then they'll assign it to people. What we have also noticed, and it is very hard for you to keep up with the API changes. Every time there is an API change, then you have to make changes as well. So there is a service that is running. Obviously, you'll have to put more maintenance into that. So some organizations that have been using their own in-house implementation have switched back to MC and Planner because they felt somebody else is doing their job for them. So they like that aspect. Planner is also relatively seems to be the easiest tool to manage. You can visualize what is happening, and you can move the buckets into different buckets easily. More than any on service now, they're liking the planner. So you might want to explore. If it has not landed in your tenant yet, please let us know. We are at 50% target release now. We will be rolling out the next wave next week. If you can reach out to me with your tenant guides and you would like this to be rolled out sooner, then we would put you on the next release as well. So it takes us about a week to get you added. Either leave it on the IM window, or you can send me an email. I will let you know the DL you should be using.
And you're talking about the feature for syncing the planner with the message center, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this tech? Go ahead, Dana.
I'm sorry, you said you would like us to share with you what exactly in order to get on that list?
You have a tenant guide.
Good. Okay, got it.
Tenant guide. So
Okay.
all we need is that, and if you can also give us the company name, we can of course get it from there. But one of the contacts from your company will be helpful in case we have to reach out for any of the questions. But tenant guides are all we need to configure.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, any comments, questions, any other best practices that have been working for you that's not listed here? All right, I will move on to the next one. So in FY21, I'll explain you the focus areas we have. In H1, before end of this year, you should be able to see a new message center experience released. We are currently working on the designs. If you would love to be part of the early adoption ring, please do let us know. We can put you on private preview. We would love to get your feedback. So you should be able to see a new experience that allows you to filter easily, much more interactively. We are adding some favoriting so that when you see a message and you would want to act on it later, you can always pin that and favorite that. You can get back. Today, the only way you can do that is by doing this as unread. We recognize that's not very helpful. So there are some improvements that are coming to the message center. We would love your feedback if you want to be in the private preview. The other aspect we are doing, some of you have mentioned message center and roadmap are not very consistent. Sometimes you see discrepancies. The reason that happens today is those two are managed in two different systems, managed by two different teams. So we solved the latter problem. We are now we have one owner that is taking care of both message center as well as the roadmap. So that should automatically bring some hygiene, make sure that consistency issues are resolved. We are also bringing the systems together this year. You will not be noticing any changes in how you interact with any of this, but you will start noticing the accuracy of the information you're seeing is much more improved, and we are targeting for 100% of that. Those are the two major things. And the third thing, which we are currently in the brainstorming and envision stage, we would like to introduce the phase of the change. So it's in development to deployed within message center. What it means is you would be able to get even the roadmap items in message center if you choose to. So you will have settings that will enable you to either filter out roadmap items, or you can get roadmap items. There is some work that we are doing to enable that. You should be able to see more details on the roadmap in about 6 to 8 weeks when we define what the scope of this feature is. But one of the things that we are also exploring. These are the three major things. We will continue to make improvements to the planner sync and giving you more functionality than what we have today. We are also working with Planner to implement the rich text. Today, you see most of it is plain text. So we are trying to get parity with Message Center, how it is formatted to make it easy for you to process. So these are the number of things that we are doing. You will start to see all of the information in the roadmap pretty soon. This is part of our fiscal year planning. Let me take a pause and see if anybody have questions, comments. All right. Okay. If I can ask, how many of you manage more than one tenant? It could be your test tenant. I assume many of you have test tenants, but how many of you have multiple production tenants that you manage today? Awesome. Mike, Dana, can you explain me what multi-tenant scenarios you have? Is it a Dan? Sorry. Go ahead.
Sure,
Mike.
I can speak to that just quickly. So obviously our company, we're a small Microsoft partner, so we manage our internal and then we help some various clients manage theirs. But we've got a demo account. We've got some practice accounts that we set up for our customers, our clients, and we have a couple other businesses that feed in that we manage as well.
Got it. Thanks, Dan. Michael, you were explaining as well.
Yeah, and so right now we have one production tenant and one tenant we use as a dev test tenant. We don't really monitor change, don't monitor the message center and the dev tenant, only in the prod tenant. But we do have there's a merger coming next summer, and so that will there'll be until we actually merge the tenants, we'll have two tenants that will be that we'll be paying attention to.
Yeah.
So we'll have two production tenants at that point.
Yeah, you will like the multi-tenant scenarios we are working on right now for sure. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Thanks. This is Mikey. Being a school, what we've found, we've got our employees in one tenant and we have our students in another tenant.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
We have a few employees on the student or academic tenant as well, but it's that separation that was wanted.
Got it. Got it. I think you will definitely find it helpful to have multi-tenant scenarios. Okay, so I'll tell you what we have already released. In the past, when you have multiple accounts, you'll have to log off and log in, or you have to have browsers in private mode and you log into different accounts. And sometimes we have heard people saying, I have and unintentionally and accidentally have deployed something in a wrong tenant. It is even not even easy to get to different tenants. It's hard, and that has been a problem, and we have been working on this for about 8 months now. So some of it is already seen the light and some is currently in progress. You have a tenant picker that is currently in 100% GA. So you can pick the tenants that you are responsible for. So we'll know which of the tenants you are entitled to see, and you will see the list of them. You can manage them. Russ, do you have questions? Right. So that we already have. What we are also working on currently, this is a private preview with a limited set of customers. We have an all tenants view. In all tenants view, you have all the tenants that you are responsible for managing or you have access to, and you have multiple columns that are from different features, different scenarios that you could see. You could see your service health. You could see how many support tickets are there for each of these tenants. Is there any license issue that I need to be on top of? And then, of course, there are some more issues. Then you also have view, and one of my colleagues calls it your Monday morning view. You want to see what's happening across your tenants. You have issues, the incidents and advisories, then tickets, information that you have. One thing that we are also working on as a fast follow is when you click some of these things, then it will highlight the tenants that have the incidents, for instance. We also, if you see on the left nav, you have the service health, message center, and billing and support. For service health and any of these scenarios, you get an aggregated view across your tenants. For instance, the service health, you will have how many incidents do I have, and how many advisories do I have, and which tenants are impacted by this, and what is the tenant level status. You will be able to see all of that. We are also working on a me control. You can switch between the accounts, and you can also see the tenants that you would like to switch to. So this is your right top corner me icon, the me control that you have. So that will be revamped to include other tenants as well, other information as well. Some reason I have a slide that is missing here. I think I lost the changes, but yeah. So I was going to show you the SHD screenshot, which has the multiple tenants and how the incident and advisories are shown. It is very similar to what you see in Service Health today, but with added information on the incidents and by tenants and how many tenants are impacted. I can show you later, or I can update the PowerPoint. I can send it to you guys. Any questions on the multi-tenant before I move on? All right. So I want to touch upon what Michael said earlier in the call in the context of SharePoint lists being deprecated. We watch the message center feedback and SHD feedback that is coming every day. So our day starts with reading the feedback that is coming from message center. If you have critical feedback, please leave it. And if you have positive feedback, please also let us know, because it's important for us to know what is making you happy, what is helping you, what is making you more effective in your job, what is helping your organization. That is as important as knowing what is not working for you. So we are paying attention. We would love your feedback. And I want to quickly show you different channels you can give us feedback. On any page within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you have this little give feedback thing, the black square on the right bottom corner of your screen. This gives, you can give feedback on this one in the context of the page you are in or the scenario you're in. We read this very extensively. Across the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, there are weekly champions that are assigned to make sure that the feedback is processed and send it to people. And there are also teams that will work. For instance, I own Message Center and SHD, so I read those Message Center feedback and SHD feedback every single day. The communication teams reads them every single day. So please use this to provide feedback on the experiences. And if you have a specific feedback about an announcement, going back to Michael's example of the SharePoint list being deprecated, if you think, for instance, the November is not the right time, you have an option to provide feedback here with thumbs up and thumbs down. Please also explain why you liked or disliked a feature announcement. Is the communication not clear? Is the timing not working? Is the feature itself not going to be helpful for you? So there are some features where we design for with the right intent, but for your companies, those do not work. That breaks some of your workflows, or that breaks your end user experience, and you probably want us to relocate it. It's not that every single feature we will go back and course correct. Some because there's a percentage of people that are seeing this impacted is very few. We might go ahead with some workaround, but we are intently listening to you, trying to understand what is working for you and what is not working for you. So please do give us feedback. This is your channel. It goes to the engineering team directly, and it goes to the communication team directly, and we do pay attention to these. On service health, you also have, are you experiencing this issue? Is this post helpful? Again, engineering team, when they are doing the investigation of the incident, or they're trying to see the signals, if we think it is resolved, do you still see the issue? So that is the feedback you're giving back to the teams that are actively working on the incident. We want to make sure your services are restored as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. So we would love to hear from them. And is our communication good? Is it giving you clarity? Are you able to understand the mitigation steps? Are we giving you timely updates? Are we taking too long? Sometimes we might have to take longer because the investigation is going on. But any information you have, any feedback you have will be helpful in us figuring out how do we do it more effectively. In case you have any questions, comments about the content I have covered, or you would like to be part of some of the private previews that we do, please drop a note us on this is my team's alias. So, and we read these emails every day. So please do drop us a note. We would love to hear from you, and my LinkedIn profile in case you would want to connect. So Michael, that's my content. Any topic that you would be interested and I have not covered here, I would be happy to talk about that as well.
Great. So, Sirisha, thank you very much. This was a wonderfully interactive session. I do want to ask you to put that email address into the chat.
Yeah.
And also to emphasize your point about about how you read and respond, or your team reads and responds to thumbs up and thumbs down signals in Message Center. I want to just share my screen again for a moment here.
Yeah, sure.
So in Message Center, I submitted a feedback on July 31st. Actually, no, this was a feedback on the roadmap. And by August 4th, someone had actually responded to me. And I found that that's pretty consistent, that if I do a thumbs up or thumbs down or a feedback, and I put my email address in, within a week or less, someone from Microsoft actually does respond directly to me specifically about my feedback.
Yeah. And we are, thank you so much for sharing that feedback, Michael. You are reinforcing our good behavior. So thank you so much for doing it. We are trying to respond to as many feedback as possible. So of course, we will not be able to cover 100%. We'll do our best to respond back to you. Even if we don't respond, just know that we are listening. We are acting on it. I'll take examples of some of the features. We have announced the departmental purchases where many organizations felt it's intrusive and you don't want Microsoft to provide that capability for your end users, and we were wrong. So Message Center feedback was one of the most useful sources for us. We've also looked at the Reddits and the social media reaction as well, but execs would see the consolidated feedback that is coming. One more advantage that we have and you have when you're giving feedback on Message Center, we understand the context of your tenant. We know how many users you have. We know what services you have enabled. So we get to know about you much more. So we have context when we are processing your feedback. So please keep it coming. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for your presentation today. I want to say it's very encouraging to see some of the changes that you all are making, and then just the awareness. I think that's encouraging too, just to see the things that we may be struggling with or the things that have been very successful for other organizations. So I'm very encouraged by these changes.
Thanks, Dana.
I just want to do a quick live demo of the planner syncing. Is planner syncing, is that generally available at this point, or is that still in preview?
We should be starting the GA end of August. We are going a little slow because the planner team, as I said, they are favoring the service stability. So we want to see how that option is taking so that we can adjust the service, scale out the service as needed. So which is why we are going a bit slow. The feature is fully ready. We are not making any more changes to this version. So you should be by mid-September, we should be GA for the most part.
Wonderful.
And I'm assuming that this is available for all global admins.
Yeah.
That they can
Our
see
tenant
that
has been in
feature
preview for quite a
if
while.
you have multiple
What you're
global
seeing on
admins in
screen
one
is our
tenant.
message center. If you click on
Yeah,
the planner syncing
any
button,
admin
you get
that
the
has
task
access
pane
to
that you
message
see
center
before you.
and the plan. So the plan that you are actually
Here you
taking,
can
they
see
should be
your
you should
planner
be able to
syncing
set this up.
options. In the organization
And
I
do you
work
have
for,
the ability
every
to
Monday we have a message center
push to
message
different
review meeting.
buckets?
So we
So
sync our
like, can you
planner
have different
every Sunday.
workloads go into different buckets?
Yeah, not
You can
today,
also
but we are
force a
definitely
sync
working on
now,
that. Yes, you
or
should
pick
see
the
that
bucket
this year.
and
I don't
plan
have the
that
exact
messages
timelines,
get
but
synced into.
that is
And you
one
can
ask
also
that we have
specify
for
which
many
categories of
recipients.
messages
So
get synced. You can
we
also
are
stop
definitely
syncing
looking
if
at
you
it.
need to.
See, the technically it is easy. It's just that how many combinations and permutations we have that we
I
don't
know.
want the wizard. So that's the only reason we are going a little slow. Our design is working hard to get it right. So.
I'm also going to show here what it looks like on the planner side.
Wonderful, thank you. Because once you get it into Planner, you could use Power Automate to run it through workflow, which would be lovely.
Yeah.
I'm super curious to know what kind of dates go in with it because of the changing dates problem. You know, sometime in this window, and Planner needs real dates. So I'm very curious to know how that gets entered in.
Yeah. So when you have, for instance, the major updates, some of them have act by dates. So we'll definitely put the date in there. But other than that, it's the body that you will see. So currently, if
okay.
Michael is showing it is this is what I'm talking about. It's the plain text right now, a little bit of formatting, but we will fix that very soon. We are working on it right now.
Yeah. So every message center post, the title goes up here. We got the message center ID, published date, last update date, and then if a post gets updated, it shows up like this usually, where it says when they updated and what the update was. Some posts do a better job than others of communicating what the update is or what the new timelines are. And then we usually end up setting the start date, due date ourselves. Let me see if I can find another example here.
Just as feedback, it might be nice to see some of the items go in as subtasks rather than as at parent card level. You know, like when you have things you should action, those could be separate subtasks, but I'll give feedback when it hits GA.
Sure. Yeah, the advantage that you have with this planner sync is planner is evolving, right? The product is going to continue to improve. For instance, you will start seeing more labels. They're working on additional labels than what they have today. We are working in their code base to figure out the rich text problem. So while we are working on the experiences side, planner product evolves and you will have much more capability than what you have today. So that's the advantage.
So Michael, did you add the
There
tag?
we go. I think they do a better job.
Did you add the tag for Office Pro Plus on that one that I can see?
Yeah, so any of these are ones we manually assign.
Okay.
And yes, doing a workflow or a Power Automate flow to do some of the tagging and assignment is definitely an area of opportunity. Well, let me point out, this one is an example of one of the better example of the ones that are updated. So here in the updated text, they say, its rollout will be complete by early September, and then parentheses previously showing what the new timeline is versus what the old one was, and not just saying what the new one is. So that's an example of them doing that well. In terms of our, go ahead.
How does it come when they update a message center post? Does it override an existing card, or does it end up as a duplicate card?
Yeah, that's one thing that we are currently working on. Today, it drops a new card. It says,
okay.
Because we want to make sure that you're reading. We are working through the requirements because one size doesn't fit all. Again, some people don't want to see the updated as a separate card. They want the current thing to be updated. So there are some nuances here which we are going to work through. But if you have a feedback around how it has to work, and once you see the planner sync, send it to us in the in-app or send it to the email that I just posted here.
Thank you.
So yeah, for our process, when we use Planner Sync, all the new cards arrive in this bucket here, Microsoft Message Center, and then in our Monday or Tuesday triage meeting, we go through each card, and the triage process is run by the Office 365 platform team that I'm head of, which is primarily our support team our SharePoint support team is part of that group. And so the messaging team is in some way our guest in the meeting, so we want to be respectful of their time. So we go through the Exchange ones first, and then when we're done with all the Exchange and Outlook changes, then they're free to leave the call, and then we go through the SharePoint ones. Besides Exchange, things like identity, we again, as we go through the list of what's new this week, we go Exchange first, then identity, then anything else that is of limited audience as to best use the time of the people on the call, and then our team will go through the SharePoint ones.
Michael, can you scroll right to see what other buckets do you have?
So we've got, this is somewhat arbitrary. Basically, most of the time we've got with things that come into Message Center, if there's action required, it'll go into to do. We may move it into in progress if it's something we're working on. If it's something that's just informational, we'll complete it right in that bucket, and that's why we've got 253 ones that are completed. We have a governance bucket. We have a bucket if we have something to take the change board, some other work, deploy things that we need to get more feedback from Microsoft about. We don't have a lot of formal structure yet on how we use some of these other buckets. It's something ad hoc. We're a little bit making it up as we go along. And so we're not necessarily consistent with how we use all the other buckets. But I think, well, it's a work in progress, but it's getting the job done. Again, because we review the Message Center posts every week, we've been able to stay ahead of the changes as much as possible, or at least on top of them.
How do you flag and track ones you've reviewed but are not applicable to your tenant due to you don't have that subscription?
If it's something that we've reviewed and it's not relevant to us, we just mark it as completed.
And Michael,
okay, thanks.
How do you choose the tags that you're using? I think, what is it, 5 max?
Right now it's 5 max. And Sirisha, do you say they're going to allow us to have more tags?
Yeah.
So this was again sort of arbitrary, grouping things loosely. SharePoint and other collaboration tools, messaging. We have a separate one for OneDrive, separate one for Yammer. Things that would impact WebEx, we can tag with that. WebEx is our alternative to Teams effectively. And I'm not sure that this is necessarily the right taxonomy. It's the taxonomy we sort of came up with on the fly, and we use it most of the time. I mean, as anyone who's worked with taxonomy and getting people to tag things, we're not exactly precise or consistent with our tagging. And frankly, in retrospect, I'm not sure that it provides that much value. I think the big thing is making sure that something that requires action gets assigned to a person and gets given a due date, and then periodically you follow up to see where we are with the tasks that needed action.
The other thing you could potentially do is have buckets to represent the workloads, because you already have the status. The progress column will give you, the in progress.
Yeah, and so right, and that's a good point, that the progress. So let's see. Again, it's an evolving taxonomy. I mean, the problem with just using progress is that something that is to do or not started, we don't want to leave in the message center column, and the buckets aren't just wouldn't just be focused like things we need to take before a change board or other governance tasks we think we need to do that are part of how we're managing change or managing our tenant. So again, the taxonomy is a work in progress, and would probably vary from firm to firm significantly.
I can give you a few flavors of how many companies are doing. Some go with workloads, as you said. They have Power Platform, Exchange, and some of the collaboration tools. So it's on workloads. And tags are mostly, the labels are mostly used for, is it plan for change, or is it a major update? And so categories of the things. Some people, actually most I've seen are in the progress bucket, because then you can progress the feature in the same way consistently across the workloads. That is one of the ways majority have done it, but there are also folks that have done workload because they have, for instance, the Power Platform is cut by a completely different team, so they want to make sure that it is separate and they do it differently.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you have totally separate teams who are working on a thing, I could actually see using Power Automate to just bounce those tasks over to a different plan entirely.
Yeah.
So
there is one team that is actually doing it today. They haven't implemented Power Automate. They definitely were planning on doing, but today they're doing it manually. So they copy the thing and move it into a different plan, and then they close it here, saying that we've already handed this off. For them, we also have a feature in the backlog which says, can I move some of these workloads into a different plan? But the most popular ask has been different buckets. Can you directly assign this is where we are not progressing that very quickly. We want to wait and see. Once we have a GA rollout, we have majority of the folks giving us feedback. Then we can have an opinion or come up with a solution that works with the most. Because if you moving into different product buckets or workload buckets is not a solution that works for everybody. So we need to.
Because the type of thing I could see would be moving it into a workload bucket and then auto assigning a tag for new, or a tag for updated, and so that way you could filter the planner based around tag to catch all the new things, and then if you were doing your triage, and then still having it within the kind of that bucket window. But thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, we can enable that in your tenant quickly if you would like, instead of waiting for that to come.
As much as I wish I could, my organization is so security conscious that we're not allowing any workloads right now outside of Teams, and only chatting and certain elements of Teams. I can't even do video. I can't have Planner. So I'm looking forward to it when I can evolve my organization to get there.
Yeah. I understand.
You know, one comment I want to make on the suggestion about tagging things as new. So for the workflow that we've got set up, or the process we put in place, it's the fact that they're in the message center bucket it indicates that they're new to us. And so in our triage meeting, we try to get entirely through the bucket every week, and that way the next week the things that are in the bucket are new. Any other questions or comments? Kathleen, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I'm just curious out of this, and maybe I missed the particular bucket for it. Where is like communication or training or any of that? Is that left for each of the individual teams to manage, or is that just sort of not in the scope? It's more of a straight tech?
Yeah, so it depends on the organization. If we see something that is going to require a lot of communication. I mean, if we take there's two different extremes, for example. On one hand, you might have a change like the image column in SharePoint lists and libraries got better. And that one, we either won't say anything about, or we'll maybe make a Yammer post about it to site owners, and that's it. So that's very minimal communication. That would be owned by our SharePoint service leader, and it'd be her responsibility to make the post in Yammer. On the other hand, there's that workflow deprecation announcement that came out on July 6th, which is going to affect many users, and there's going to be extensive communication required. And for a change that has a much bigger impact, requires a lot more communication coordination, like the workflow one, where we need to reach out to workflow owners and work with them to educate them on Power Platform and help them migrate to migrate from SharePoint Designer, SharePoint 2010 workflows to Power Platform. That we would stand up a whole separate project for, and it makes sure that project has an organizational change management resource that's part of the project team and coordinates all the communication that we'll have to do.
Great, thanks. I just want to make sure I understood sort of how that was accommodated in what you were showing.
So in the workflow I was showing was specific to my organization and is evolving, but certainly overall end user communication or stakeholder communication is a critical part of handling any change. And there was one feature I mentioned earlier of Teams that I want to show, which is in preview. I'm going to share my screen. The three dots menu, on or off live captions. Down here. And so whoever the speaker is, this is a feature you can turn on as an end user, and whatever the speaker says, or whoever's speaking, will be translated for you. So that can help with making the content accessible. Or that's again off the three dots menu. When it's off, it'll say turn on live captions. Of course, now that I have it on, it says turn off.
I'm assuming that you guys are going to share the presentation. There was quite a bit of nice information about the events at the very beginning that we would like to check out, if that's okay.
Yep, I'll be putting my slides on SlideShare.
Okay.
And Sirisha, can you share your deck as well?
Yeah, I will do that too.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.